The way to move ahead or get promoted is to think about what could you do that would make your boss's job easier.
That's kind of the goal as a leader. You want to be able to make sure that everything that you know, you're being able to pass it down, pass it on to the generations that come after you.
And so as we started to grow, what I tried to do was hire people that were smarter than me, with more experience than me, that were more seasoned than me. I did not care.
If you're in that position and you want to be a leader, take control, make the decisions, and live with them.
I definitely think the challenge is the people, but it's also the best part. It's what I love the most about our firm and our jobs. You've got to learn to work with people. We're in a customer service industry. We're getting paid at the end of the day to do a job.
Hello and welcome to Blueprint for Excellence, the Indovance Leadership Series. I'm your host, Sandesh Joshi, CEO of Indovance Inc., an engineering outsourcing services company. For more than 20 years, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work with and learn from a lot of engineering and architecture leaders. I've created this podcast series to bring out the leadership success stories for the benefit of fellow leaders, to-be leaders, entrepreneurs, and the industry in general. Success isn't an accident. It's a purposeful dedication of time and effort towards a goal. Let's listen, relate to, and learn what that looks like when put into practice. Today, my guests are Ann Fritz, Managing Principal at ESG, and Eddie Munoz, Survey Director of Land Development at Southeastern Surveying and Mapping Corp. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
With that, if I may ask Ann, if I may start with you, if you could walk me through your career journey so far and introduce yourself to the visitors.
Sure. My name is Ann Fritz, as you mentioned. I am a managing principal, but also an interior designer by trade, by discipline, for ESG Architecture and Design. I've been here for almost 22 years. I started as the intern and within 6 months kind of worked my way into getting on jobs just because there was a need and I was willing to help and pitch in. And before I knew it, I had kind of that interior design title and then worked my way up thanks to the recession in a way. Sometimes those bad things open doors. That was a really hard time for our firm. We went from about 97 people down to 21, and I was the only interior designer left. And luckily, I was working on some university work, so the public work sector was a little bit more secure than the private sector. A lot of our clients are developers. And out of that recession, then as we started to grow again, I was the one left standing. So I got to help create and build our new team, which now has 35 interior designers in our firm of 120 people. So I don't know if they kept me around because of my personality or just because what I was working on, but it did work out in my advantage, despite how hard the recession was. That's one of the things that I think is interesting about our industry. It's very cyclical. It depends on the economy. But we've been able to ride the waves and now work across the country for developers in about 20 states. We're licensed in 40. I travel all the time. We're based out of Minneapolis. But I do a lot of work across the country, especially in the hospitality industry, multifamily, and office design. And then manage the team of designers, and then as a managing principal, also help manage the firm as a whole as one of the owners here.
Great. That sounds like a fantastic journey, fantastic growth journey, I would say, for you personally as well as the company. And I think one thing that kind of caught my attention, you said something about, you put a positive spin to the recession, and that's I see often people who persevere or leaders who succeed is who essentially stand the test of time. So good for you, and good for, I guess, people who wait, especially through tough times, see greater opportunities eventually. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on, Eddie, if you could introduce yourself and help us with your background.
Sure. My name is Eddie Munoz. I'm currently the Director of Land Development for Southeastern Surveying Mapping in our Orlando office. I also serve as the vice president for the Central Florida division in our company. I've been surveying for about 15 years, and kind of similar to Ann, my surveying journey started right at the tail end of the recession. This is when I first fell into the surveying industry, if you will. I recently graduated with a AS degree in drafting design, so I wanted to find a career path to be able to use that new recently earned degree. So I answered an interview for a surveyor who kept trying to rebound right after the recession. So I had no idea what surveying was, but I kind of got sold on being outside and being inside, doing, the outside part of it and doing the inside part of it as well. So I joined on with him at the entry level, the very entry level position in the industry, which would be a rodman. So from there, I started really enjoying the industry, enjoying the tasks. Learned everything field related, learned office related, how to go collect data, process that data, turn it into an end deliverable to suit our clients. So fast forward, I'm in there learning the industry, learning all the skills and the knowledge I need, and just kind of continually growing up the career ladder, promoting, rising through the ranks. I quickly outgrew the small company that we were at, so I needed something a little bit bigger with more opportunities to grow. So I ended up coming to Southeastern Surveying in 2017. So I've been here for 9 years. In that time, I came into this position as a survey technician, continued my education, and I eventually earned my license in 2020 to become a professional surveyor and mapper. And in that time period, there was a kind of a big transition. A lot of the surveyors that were in the company, especially in the office that I work out of, were retiring and moving on. So it led to a pretty early route for me to go into a leadership position. I was kind of thrust into leadership because of the transitions going on. But while I was, trying to still figure out and learn myself what my leadership style was, but kind of being thrust in it and, getting your feet to the fire, you really start to learn a lot about, what it takes to gain the trust of your employees, gain the trust of your team, help promote your team, and help kind of guide and be a mentor. So in that time period, I grew from being a project manager up to being a director, eventually in my vice president role. And, I have a seat on the board of directors here at the company as well. So it was a pretty successful, pretty driven timeline for me to reach the leadership positions that I'm holding right now. But a lot of hard work and went behind all of that, and being able to adapt quickly with the way that things changed. I do spend a lot of time now in the mentorship position, trying to train others, just to spread the knowledge and experience and help train my replacement, because, that's kind of the goal as a leader. You want to be able to make sure that everything that you're being able to pass it down, pass it on to the generations that come after you. So that's one of the big things I'm working on now, but happy to be in this position and keep being successful.
Great. That's a fantastic journey. I mean, congratulations again over last 15 years of your growth journey. And I think you touched on some leadership concepts, especially you talked about making yourself replaceable. Developing others is part of being a good leader. And I'm wondering if I can continue on that topic. As you grew up the leadership ladder, so to say, from an individual contributor, Eddie, to a managerial team leader or some sort of leadership position, I'm wondering, how do you look back? What were your challenges, opportunities? How was that journey?
It was a little rocky at first, especially being kind of thrust into there. There was a handful of licensed surveyors that left almost in the same time frame. So having to kind of jump into some of their roles, and while I'm still trying to grow myself professionally, I don't have all the answers. So It took quite a bit of determination, hard work just to be able to dive in, and keep the ship running. While there's some transition going on internally in businesses, your external, your clients don't really understand that, and they still demand the same kind of quality, the same response, the same care that they've been accustomed to from the previous generation. So while there wasn't really a good handing over of the torch, if you will, it was more like, okay, we're gone. Go ahead and you take it from here. That's one thing that I really try to make sure that I don't let happen when it's my turn and when my successors come in, just to make sure that they're groomed, they're well trained, they understand everything that, I've had to go through personally and some of those challenges that I've had to face, to make sure that it's nice and easy, the transition's good, and nothing kind of skips a beat.
So it sounds like, I mean, you are essentially thrown into a problem. You have to step up suddenly, yes, and suddenly a lot of things, a lot of moving parts, a lot of new projects, and probably lesser number of team to manage more number of projects, things like that. So in the short term, I guess you have to do what you have to do. You just do firefighting, whatever it takes. But I'm wondering, how did you come out of it long term? How did I guess you evolve to elevate yourself and the team to a better position?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was through trial and error, honestly, at the very beginning, just trying to make sure that the demands of the clients are met, make sure that all the resources are allocated as needed. And if you're it's such an interesting perspective if you're thrown into something when you're really not quite ready, or you don't think that you're ready. A lot of imposter syndrome starts to set in. You're like, man, am I the right person for this job? What am I doing? But the more that you go through that experience, the more that you gain the knowledge, and the more that you kind of get comfortable with the processes and take the ownership, right? You take the ownership of, what, this has to be done. I'm here in this position. I have to do it no matter what. So let's figure out a way to get it done and make sure that we're still staying true to our core, staying true to our values. And it really proved very, very good. In those next few years, I was able to make sure that I kept, all of the client relationships in a good position. I was able to help grow our clientele base, and we have seen significant growth since the 2018, 2019 years. And I think it was just a better approach to leadership as far as client outreach, client relationships, while focusing on the internal and bringing up or putting a better focus on the training and the mentoring and the leadership internally, to make sure that we're all here on the same team. We have one common goal that we're all striving to reach. And what's the best way for us to do this as a team?
Excellent. And I think you talked about a lot of things, but I think one thing kind of stuck in my mind is taking ownership. That's the key. You at some point you have to decide. I have to do it. If somebody has to own it, and I am, and that's what creates a leader often. And I'm wondering, Anne, I mean, how do you relate to his story? What's your story about stepping up from an individual contributor to a leadership role?
Yeah, I actually feel like there's a lot of similarities. When the recession happened and I was the last man standing, you really, as you start to grow, you do feel like you're kind of faking it till you make it, that saying. But it turns out just by doing it, you're figuring it out and you're building trust. And clients don't know that, I was a team of one. And so as we started to grow, what I tried to do was hire people that were smarter than me, with more experience than me, that were more seasoned than me. I did not care that they had more years of experience. I wanted the work to get done well, and I didn't have time to train them as much. So I went for more senior people to hire right away. I had the people skills, luckily, and understood the kind of history and culture of our firm, and then could help shape that culture. So I think when you're building your team, I always say I look for the DNA or the spirit of the person, and the rest we can teach. I care about that more than their resume. That's why we maintain the kind of culture that we have. And that's really important to me. That's built on trust, people that are hardworking, people that want to dig in and get it done. That's a big deal. And I think because I was the one in the position of hiring people, I quickly switched to a leadership role. I definitely think one of the big challenges is that when I was so used to doing all of the work myself, now I was delegating more of the work or overseeing it. And it's hard to not get in there and just fix it and do it yourself when you're in that transition stage, and that you're, and now I lead more globally. I have multiple people that are reporting to me or that I'm working alongside or with. I'm influencing the work versus doing it all myself. And that transition takes some time, and you kind of have to be patient with yourself. But I feel like the team we've created now, we've built all these new processes and ways of doing things and best practices. And that comes from mistakes. You make mistakes and then you do it better the next time. And so I feel like we're kind of a well-oiled machine, and we know what kind of people we want to attract. And it's an honor to lead this group and be a part of something that I believe in so strongly.
Wonderful. I think, you talked about will versus skill, how I like to think about it. Will of a person is often more important than the skill. You can teach somebody a skill, but not really the will. And also, I love the way you put it, fake it until you make it. And another version of that I've seen is you kind of, often as leaders, we have to build the bridge as we walk on it, because it's not clear. We have the vision where we are heading, but not necessarily the path to it, at least not all the way to where where we are heading. I'm wondering, the initial leadership growth journey, and I'm wondering, as you describe your struggle, like most of us go through, and now you have learned a lot and kind of expanded your team globally. So what kind of leadership challenges are you dealing with now? Or, how do you see yourself differently in terms of challenges you're tackling today?
I think it's interesting when you go to school, like both of us went to design or drafting school. I never thought that I would be doing so much with personnel and people and personalities. As a manager, you're managing people, and I happen to have 35, I think almost all entirely females. And so everyone loves each other. We get along well, but we have this trust and rapport where they feel like they can come to me with concerns or complaints. So sometimes I feel like I'm a therapist more than a boss. And just understanding how to navigate those personalities and put teams together and pair people's strengths in a way that complement a team versus, I always say, if I have two very design-oriented creatives on a project, they're just like spinning tops and nothing gets drawn. Like I need the practical, pragmatic person to get something on paper and not just ideas in the sky. Like, I definitely think the challenge is the people, but it's also the best part. It's what I love the most about our firm and our jobs. Or clients that can be difficult. Not all clients are rosy and amazing. There are some that are hard to work with, and you've got to learn to work with people. We're in a customer service industry. We're getting paid at the end of the day to do a job. And so having to ask clients for money or those kinds of things, like those are not fun conversations always, but those are parts of my job that I never thought I would be doing when I was in interior design school.
Yeah, and I think you rightly said people. I think people, heard people multiple times, and that's one piece we are often not taught in school, how to work with people. I mean, as simple as it might sound, but that becomes often the core of leadership. And everybody eventually figures it out one way or another. But people, something, I have learned, anything that I don't know is difficult, but once I know it, it's easy. So if we don't know how to work with people, it seems challenging for sure. Now, but that's also the opportunity. Having great people around us is really the key to future growth. So I'm wondering, Eddie, how do you look at your journey right now as in initial struggles versus what are you focused on in terms of leadership right now?
I think Ann nailed that one with the hammer. The most important thing I think we all could agree on is your team and your people. In the leadership roles that we're in, you're forced to wear multiple hats every day. You're wearing your leader hat, you have to wear your team player hat, your in QA QC process hat, and one of the most important ones I think is I call it the Dr. Phil hat, right? You have to be able to know how that you're approaching your team and the specific people on your team when you're trying to get together and get a project done. So the way that I would approach John, for example, on a specific task is not the same way that I would approach Jane with the same kind of task, right? You have to when you develop those relationships and build that camaraderie and build that trust within your team, you also have to learn the best way to communicate with them. And in terms of what is their learning styles, how do they learn? Do I need to talk to them directly with data, or do I need to talk to them from a big picture point of view with ideas and get them excited about the idea of the project? So that is one of the most important things when you're putting your team together, and it is a challenge because people are people, and there's different attitudes, different days of the work you come in, stuff's going on in your life, and taking that moment, that pause to learn or absorb how they're coming across to you in their conversations is a key thing to pick up on and be able to grow and Dr. Phil the situation as needed, which I love it. That's one of the best parts because at the end of the day, your teammates, they recognize that, they understand that. Okay, well, he's not just kind of coming at me from a demanding perspective. Is more of I'm here as your teammate, as your right next to you, working through these projects. What's the best way for us to do this together to meet the same goal? So making sure that the teams there in place, that you build that camaraderie. At the end of the day, it builds trust, right? And it builds a culture. And like Ann said, when you're first interviewing somebody, yeah, you look at the resume, but the most important thing is how do you feel about that person and how do they fit into that culture that you're building, right? If it's the best resume in the world, they knock out all the boxes, but then when you have the opportunity to interact with them, you could get a feeling pretty quickly if that person is going to be part of the culture or if it's just not going to be a good fit. And sometimes, you have to sacrifice the stars, the 5-star recruit, just because it's not really a good fit for your team.
Yep. Very well said. I think people think the resume on paper is of course valuable, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, not the complete puzzle. And in looking at the culture, looking at the right fit is often far more important. Um, I'm wondering, if you look back as Eddie, look back through your, let's say, halfway through your career journey, and if you were to advise yourself, how would you advise your younger self to be a better leader? And now that you know what you know,
If I could go back, I would tell myself to trust the process, right? There are so many times that I felt overwhelmed. I didn't really feel like I was making the best decisions all the time, just because, again, just being thrown into the fire and having to be forged out of the fire, you do have to make some decisions sometimes that you second guess yourself, right? Um, and if I go back and tell myself something, it'd be, relax, trust the process, right? You've established this goal of where you want to be in the next 5-10 years. Stick with the process and continuing to be present in those everyday moments, right? Those little moments that happen every day during the routine. By being present, that's where you gain the experience, you gain the knowledge, you gain the armor, right? you're gaining all these little things that you really don't really take the time to appreciate when you're going through them. But if you can just take a minute to relax, absorb it, and just kind of trust where the process is going, you gain the experience, right? And that's what's important is gaining the experience by actually going through it, and creating the avenues and creating the path for those following behind you.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like also in a way you're, or at least I'm picking up is to be more patient is just trust the process, as you said. And sometimes, especially the younger self is impatient, like I want results now, or maybe even
Absolutely.
yesterday if I could. So very well said. Um, uh, Same question for you, Anne. I'm wondering, what would you advise your younger self in terms of leadership? How can you do better?
I think I'd cut myself some slack, maybe give myself a little more grace and not be afraid to ask for help. I think I advocate for myself very well. I think there's a balance with today's younger generation. They almost advocate too much, I can say, for themselves and are not always thinking about the bigger picture or the company or there's a bigger picture out there. And I appreciate their boldness and their willingness to speak up and say, I need a raise. I deserve that. But then they're not always understanding the why behind it. I don't think I did that enough in a way. Like as a younger leader, I just did what I was told. I just tried to work hard and show up and, every day put on a bright face and keep going. But sometimes at a detriment to like my well-being or my family or, my work-life balance. I think it's generational too. It's interesting how certain generations are just suck it up and get it done. And others are like, oh, I need to go, take a personal day. And I think there's a balance of that. And it's an interesting time as leaders where the baby boomers are all retiring. We've had a second generation shift of owners in our firm. And now, I'm in my 40s and I'm the old crotchety one at this point. I don't know, but sometimes the youth, the younger generation, I think they look up to us in a way that's great that they look up to us for advice, but they also think why are you working so hard? Go home. I don't know. It's a different world. And I think looking back, I would maybe not be so hard on myself and just have a little bit more patience, like you said, and again, not be afraid to ask for help.
Be more kind to yourself in a way, I think you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, both of you. I mean, what you're sharing is really some vulnerable moments. I mean, sharing so what you can improve upon or how you look back is really powerful. It's really helpful, especially for the future leaders, to be leaders, to hear from successful people like you, that you also went through a similar phase, and it's really really nice to hear from both of you. I'm wondering, Anne, what is an exciting project or what is it that you're working on right now that maybe keeps you up at night in terms of excitement? What are you excited about?
I would say right now I'm really excited about where the hospitality industry is going. We're seeing a lot of activity around the country whether it's a new stadium or a university, but any of those kind of bigger kind of campuses that bring people together where there's a lot of hotels and entertainment happening in those areas. I'm not really a sporty girl, but for some reason I keep getting to work on these hotels that are sports adjacent. My husband's like, how come you get to work on these things? You don't even know the names of any of these players I mentioned. But I understand the spirit of a team and wanting it to do well. And that's been really, really fun. We're seeing a lot of conversions. I feel like in the architecture world, conversions have been talked about for a long time, but taking a building that was something and turning it into a total new use has been very rewarding to work on, whether it's a historic adaptive reuse, where you get to work with something that's got some really cool bones and history, or even taking, let's say, a limited service hotel and totally gutting it and remodeling it and then raising the rates and doing a boutique hotel, but having the same footprint and not having to spend as much money because you've got the infrastructure and the kind of core building elements there to make that make sense financially for some of these owners. So hotels are definitely just fun. People love going to a hotel that makes them feel something about whatever city they're visiting. So it's really digging in and researching the demographic, the area, and making sure that it's a place that even the locals want to hang out and not just a place that you have to go stay on a business trip, but that you want to be in those lobbies. Like, my job is fun. The fact that I get to let people feel something when they walk into a space is pretty cool.
I think what I'm hearing also, I think you're excited about doing something new, which is changing. And I'm wondering, as much as it's exciting, new things often come with challenges. Are there any challenges that you're dealing with? Anything that comes to your mind?
Absolutely. The economy is a big challenge. As like tariffs started, that affected my industry big time. And so certain projects will go on hold or hit the brakes when you work with developers in the private sector, especially. It's very dependent on loans and banks being willing to loan money to these owners. And so sometimes you get really excited about a project and I've got my heart set on it and I can't wait. And then it goes on hold or it dies or it comes back and then stop, start, stop, start. That's frustrating and challenging. And it's also difficult from a staffing perspective to like keep the same consistent teams on it. And I'd say that is difficult. And so is workload, managing our workload with 110 people. And when those projects can have inconsistent schedules, keeping 110 people busy, and juggling staffing and personalities and all of those things and getting the right person on the right job and consistently on the right job. That's a big challenge that I actually have to go to a workload meeting later. And it's a puzzle every day.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. Talking to a lot of our clients as well. I think managing fluctuating workload is one of the toughest things, and managing people along with that, mapping them correctly. So I respect that. I completely understand. So I'm wondering, Eddie, what are you working on? What excites you? What's your exciting project right now?
I think right now what I'm most excited for is actually more industry wide, and kind of the future or the direction that the surveying industry is moving forward. I think historically, most of the project managers or the licensed surveyors, especially here in Florida, were always older. I think maybe the average age of a surveyor was like mid to late 50s. But now I'm starting to notice that there's a lot more of the younger generation that are getting interested in the surveying industry and are starting to pick that career path over, some other similar avenues like, civil engineering or any kind of GIS components or something like that. And it's good to see that. So I really am excited about being able to play a role by going to, high schools or going to colleges and having the opportunity to speak about a profession, the technology ever evolving. I think, with like drones and scanning and LiDAR, and all the new technology that's available, it kind of really piques the interest of, the generation that's coming up, because it's like the video game generation, right? And if you can kind of relate the video game aspect of it over to, it's very similar going and scanning a whole field and looking at that data or the point cloud and treating it by somewhat like a video game. Hey, here's your challenge now. How are we going to process this data to make it usable? Like building twin cities and stuff like that. And it seems like the younger generation is on top of it, right? So being able to connect that gap or, bridge the new tech savvy younger generation and, guide them into a fulfilling career where they could use that imagination, they could use those skills, those soft skills that it seems like they're born with, and try to make this industry more youth centric and attract more potential future licensed surveyors to our industry. So that's something that I have a lot of interest in, trying to outreach as much as I can to the younger generation, get them on track, and just provide an example of, hey, here's a very successful career path for you. You could be have a great career doing whatever it is that you want to do and love it and build something very successful for yourself.
In surveying, you talked about kind of correlating it to video games, digital data, LiDAR. Where does AI fit in?
AI. Well, I mean, I started playing a little bit with AI as far as trying to generate reports or generate manuals, QA, QC documents, even proposal letters, stuff like that. And there's always, I think everybody kind of has the underlying lack of knowledge or fear of AI. Like, will this replace me? Right. I think one positive thing for land surveyors is that as long as there's a need for humans out in the field to actually perform the work to data collect, then, AI would be a useful tool to help, some of those processes. But that's what it is. It's a tool, right? You don't ever want to be dependent on AI because you still need to have some creativity. There still has to be some human decisions to be made, interpretations of data, and things like that. So as we move further along in this new AI world, just being able to refine or learn processes using AI and just remembering that it's a tool, it's a tool in your toolbox to help you refine, create processes, and things like that.
And I mean, AI is a buzzword for probably a couple of years now, and it's hard not to talk about AI. I'm wondering, how does AI fit into your company or your industry? What do you see the role?
Yeah, I definitely hear about it at every conference I attend. We're all experimenting with it. Like Eddie, we use it as a tool, especially to help with writing. But you can tell when something's generated by ChatGPT or AI versus a human. And I think design is so personal, and people understand design, whether they can describe it or not, they feel it. And so I think it's really important that we keep that human touch on things. We use AI, though, like to study design ideas. It doesn't mean we're going to exactly copy what gets regurgitated to us through AI. But if it's a way to quickly look at examples, we could do this or this, and then we from there build our own idea. But it helps influence the end game. It definitely can save time. I think it's a little bit scary that you could get like a whole set of documents for a building drafted by AI, but doesn't mean it's good design. I think people say, well, what if my job goes away? And I'm like, well, clients need us to tell them what design is good. Like, that's why they hire us, right? So we have to be the ones feeding the AI machine those words and those descriptors and those parameters or that program, or it just doesn't come up with it by itself. So somebody's got to be the manpower, woman power behind it that has to kind of drive those decisions. So it'll be interesting. It's fun to see it used for renderings and 3D renderings and things like that, or even furniture design. We can put in something and say, build this chair, we want it to feel like this, and it spits out ideas. And, that's kind of cool. And then we can sketch over it and change it and manipulate it. And so, like Eddie said, it is a tool. It gets things going.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, a tool for ideation, research, kind of coming up with something, a concept very quickly, tweaking it, but
Yep.
then eventually you work on it a lot more to get to really what you need it to be.
Yeah, it's not the
So
solution.
yeah, absolutely. I think AI is definitely becoming a common tool everywhere you go. So good to hear. I'm wondering, as you look at your industry and what's coming up, what are the big changes that you see? What is exciting? What is scary?
I definitely think AI is a big change, and it's not to dwell on that topic, but it's influencing things greatly. It'll be interesting to watch how it plays out in terms of some of the mundane things that we do, that are more clinical or repetitive, more administrative tasks, note-taking or reporting. Like, that makes total sense for me, that can create some efficiencies and help us spend more time doing the creative things we love and let AI do some of the mundane, kind of monotonous things. Like I can see that happening. I also think that our world is turning more global. ESG only works nationally, but it'll be interesting to see how design starts to reach internationally, and how travel is changing and how people are working. Just even us doing this call or recording today, all of us in different states completely. And COVID really gave us all a big boost because, we all learned. I designed an entire 34-story building with a team from my home office, like that's crazy that we can do that now. And so I think it's interesting I travel all the time, like I said, but almost all my clients and projects are out of state, and I am doing a lot of that work virtually. I'm going to get on a call for a project in Ohio, and I have another one in Wisconsin, and I'm flying to Vegas tomorrow. Like travel and just our ability to share knowledge and information like that, I think is really changing our world, not just our industry.
Yep, I think the world is truly getting global. It's getting smaller. So yeah, I definitely second everything you just said. Eddie, what do you have to say? What's your industry going through? What's exciting?
I think along the same lines of what Ann was mentioning, I think technology, as technology keeps on enhancing, all it does is improve our work processes, make the data collection so much more efficient. A few years ago, GPS, got introduced into surveying, and then that really reduced the amount of time that you needed to collect data, accurate data, survey quality data. And now, the next wave generation is LiDAR, drones, mobile LiDAR mapping, et cetera, along with some of the real-time communication that Ann mentioned, right? Before, a few years ago, it was always, how do you get data from the field to the office? Well, you need to bring it in, you need to dump it on a computer, then you need to go through all the processing, where we're getting to the point now of real-time communication, where the field crews are going to be in the field collecting data, and you could observe them real time while they're collecting that data, and be able to have it instantly, get it processed before they even make it back to the office. So as technology evolves and some of those processes get streamlined and more efficient, it just leads to a better project, more quality deliverable that we do it in the long run in a shorter amount of time, which of course is going to cut costs, right? Make us more efficient to our clients, and make our clients' schedule more manageable as well. So technology is definitely a good one. And again, just looking forward to being able to mentor and hone the next generation of leaders, right? Making sure that we're putting creating a path for them to move forward, so they can learn from our mistakes and turn into great leaders themselves.
I think that's a wonderful point, and I think developing future leaders is also a noble cause. It's important for the industry. So good for you, Eddie. And on that note, I want to emphasize this podcast is really about sharing leadership stories. So really appreciate both of you sharing your leadership journey for the benefit of other leaders, to be leaders. And on a closing thought, I'm wondering, if you have the opportunity to give a 30-second advice to for someone mid-career looking to expand into a leadership role, what would that advice be? Ann, do you want to go first?
Sure. Someone mentioned this the other day, and I can't stop thinking about it. But the way to move ahead or get promoted is to think about, what could you do that would make your boss's job easier instead of making it harder. Like some employees make our jobs harder because they're difficult to manage, or there's a struggle, and others see a need and they're proactive, and they think ahead, they see the big picture, and you go to them like, oh, I already did it, and I did this XYZ, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Thank you. Now I don't have to do that. I think that's how you get seen and noticed and move up quickly.
Wonderful. I think what I'm also hearing between the lines is that your boss is essentially your customer. Make sure you deliver to your customer, and kind of that's going to help you climb up the ladder. So thank you, Ann. Eddie.
Yeah, I love that answer, and that was perfect. So I would like to steal that one, but I'm not going to. But I'm gonna remember that for my day-to-day job. I think one thing that I would make sure to mention to somebody that's wants to continue their leadership journey is to be present in the moment, right? All the tasks that you do routinely on a day-to-day job, there's always an opportunity, like Ann said, to be able to rise, to go above and beyond, to go that extra mile, right? If you know there's a submission coming up, and let's say I'm out of the office on a call, go ahead and bundle it up and just have it ready to go, so I don't have to do the miniature stuff, right? There's so many little tasks that could get delegated throughout the day that you're just like, well, I'll just take care of this. But if you're, in that position and you want to be a leader, just take control, make the decisions, and live with them. Be present in those opportunities, because they come along. And if you just grab it and go with it, that is leading by example, and you don't even know it.
Yeah, I mean, I think very well said. I look for the small wins, look for the smaller opportunities, and there, if I'm awake enough, I'll see it everywhere. So living in the moment, I love that. So on that note, I really want to thank both of you for joining this podcast. And in the spirit of Indovance tagline, "Let's grow together," I sincerely appreciate you being open and vulnerable and sharing your career stories candidly and helping us all grow together. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful day.